Gabri's mission is to transform the understanding of humanity through the arts. Born and raised in the Caribbean island of Caracas, you'll have to say that.
Curaçao.
Thank you. Gabri is a member of Crossroads Culture, and her multidisciplinary and wide-ranging work expresses the politics and poetics of interchanging races, rhythms, and histories through film, choreography, performance, curation, writing, and more. And she will perform today and then be interviewed by Calvin Kaiku, a professional variety entertainer and artistic director at the Medical Clown Project. Calvin has 20 plus years experience in the art of magic, which he combines with circus and theater to create a completely unique performance style. They are both incredible performers and connectors of people. So Gabri, I will turn the stage to you.
Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. And thank you everybody for being here. It's wonderful to be here. Do you see this little black doll? How beautiful. This little black doll, this one, was my mother's doll. And I've always loved this doll. And a few years ago, my mom gave me this doll. It now lives in my living room under a glass cylinder. It's right behind, right there. And you see the clothes it's wearing? Really old. This is like, my mom made those by hand. And I have a few other clothes that she made. And sometimes I change the clothes. But mostly this doll just sits in our living room when my husband, my daughter and I sit on the couch and watch television or read a book. Now, I first met this doll at my grandmother's house because my mother had left this doll when she moved out because she was afraid the doll would break if it would go with her. And I don't know if you can see this, or hear it. But this is a porcelain doll. Just gorgeous, I think. And so the doll lived with my grandmother, where I met the doll for the first time. And then my mother gave it to me after she got it back when my grandmother died. Now, how did a little white girl from the Netherlands in Rotterdam, blonde hair, blue-eyed, how on earth did she get this little black doll? Because in Rotterdam, and this is like, we're talking beginning 40s, right after World War II, in Rotterdam, the world's worst bombed city. How did she get her hand on a black doll? There were absolutely no stores to buy it. There were no black people living in the Netherlands at the time. So how did she get her hand on a black doll? I mean, I never had a black doll growing up. I had white dolls with red hair. And they just didn't sell them. I mean, I'd seen those dolls, you know, the ones that are cartoonish, blackface. In Curacao, where I was born and raised, they sold them to the tourists. That's an other story. But I've never seen a doll like this, like that one that looks like like a baby, right? So I asked my mom, how did you get this doll? Where did you get this doll? And she told me she had gotten it from her oldest sister, Leni, quite a lot older than her. My aunt Leni, Tante Leni, as we say in Dutch. And she had given it to my mom. But how did Leni get it? Well, Tante Leni was dating this older sailor. He was married. My family, my mother's family, was highly Catholic. So for my Tante Leni to have an affair with this married sailor was a thing. And then he brought her this back. And they also had 2 children out of wedlock. 2 sons. So she couldn't give the doll to her sons. Well, they didn't want it. So she gave this doll to my mom. And my mom happily adopted it. She was so excited. And My mother, when she was a teenager, she wanted to become a nun, a missionary nun in Papua New Guinea. Why Papua New Guinea? Because the Netherlands had different colonies. They had, the Dutch Guyana, Suriname, the Dutch West Indies, Indonesia. But Papua New Guinea, why that? Well, my mom loved the way their faces were so dark, like this face, and how they also looked like the Aboriginals from Australia, but they had these really big curls. So that's where she wanted to go. My mom never made it to Papua New Guinea. Instead, she married my dad and moved with him to Curacao from the Netherlands, the Dutch West Indies, where my brother and I were born and where she raised us. And I can't help thinking, when I look at this doll, this little black doll, if this doll, with this cute little face, if this doll made my mom fall in love with my dad, if it is this doll that instilled in her lust for adventure and for travel. Thank you. Here are my parents. This for their engagement, so beautiful. And then I will show you quickly, if I can do, how my mom looked at the time she got this doll. That's my mom. This is for her first communion. She already had gotten the doll. And somehow it looks like her eyes are brown here, but I think that's the that's the thing. All right. Hi.
Gabri, thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, welcome. I'm so excited to share this story.
It's a beautiful story. It's so powerful to imagine what an object that one grows up with can potentially shape your perspective and your lens of the life that we live. I mean, the lens that shapes the way how we see the world and how we see ourselves, our identity. So I would love to hear from you. Now, this doll was made by this artist that got eventually into the hands of your mother, but it also has inspired you to use your creativity to share this story about your mother and about her experience maybe with memory loss. How did this this whole experience of this doll and this object has inspired your creativity to share this story?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's such a good question. Well, there are a few parts to it, really. One is that when Katie asked me to do this, I thought, I want to talk about this doll because there's also this idea of identity related to this. My mom is very white, and I say that whenever I see her, and I'll show her she look, and it's just like very white, very blue-eyed, very blonde, but her identity is not just that, right? And so the doll became like a way of looking at what shaped her, because she comes from a rather poor family, a lot of kids, and then what choices she made. And the creativity just came by listening to her. My mom lives with dementia. And when she started in this process and I noticed she was losing her memory, I started just asking her questions about reading, just ask her to talk to me and ask her questions. So it became this bond between us to just listen and learn more about her, because I never actually asked this. And then I started writing it down, and she wrote me. She could still write. She doesn't write very well anymore. So this this became part of my creativity and my imagination by just taking what she told me and I made it in a little story, but it also allowed me to just question assumptions of people about identity of seeing this mother. I mean, I just was I haven't seen her because of COVID, but when I visited her, I was with her in the store. She was in a wheelchair, and I kissed her. And then the woman said to me, "Oh, you people are always so nice." And I was like, it took me a minute, and I thought, oh, she cannot understand I'm her daughter. Right?
Wow.
And that happened to me growing up, so it also relates to my identity and this connection, my mom, how there was this assumption, right? And then the other part that was really about my identity as her daughter, right? That sort of was taken away by that. So part of the creativity is also telling stories that maybe people haven't heard, but also really even treating that woman with kindness and treating myself with kindness as somebody who has a blonde white mother, who is my white mother, who I love dearly, right? And so, yeah, I don't know if that really answers it, but it talks a little bit about
it. It does. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like with this exploration of getting to know your mother, getting to be curious with these assumptions, to discover more, it is a wonderful way to dig into the creativity of how you express what you're learning, what that interaction, what that connection is all about with your mother. Now, if anyone who actually, I'm gonna go to this chat. Someone's saying, Vincent Van Gogh said, "There's nothing more artistic, creative than to love people." Thank you so much, Mark Lombard.
Mark Lombard, you just made me tear up here. I did never heard that, but it
beautiful.
Is true. It's beautiful, right?
Beautiful sentiment.
Yeah, because it's also, you have a love of people, and out of that comes a creativity. Sometimes it's just to create understanding. I always talk about that, but really create understanding comes from deep listening to whomever the person is. We all have eyes and ears, and really digging into that. And I think what happened to me, how my mother's dementia helped me, is that I really wanted to tell stories more than I did before, because storytelling was a way to preserve her, but also a way to hopefully create some understanding. And that's where sort of the creative spark came in. But then, of course, telling it in my way.
Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. I love the idea of just trying to use that creativity to dig deeper, right, into these understandings. I'm going to go into the chat one more time. Someone is saying, Lori S. is saying that the questions of identity, what we feel internally and what is seen externally, is important to me. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to go into another question real quick that I have for you, since we only have a couple more minutes. And for those who are maybe new to the creative process, or maybe they're wanting to utilize their own creativity to explore whatever story or whatever love of someone that they may have, what advice would you give to them to just get started in tapping into their creativity?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we're all creative. It's just, do we allow ourselves to be creative? And I talk about this a lot. It's like the process, and don't go for the perfect thing, but enjoy the process of exploring creativity. And um, and what is that? That can be different for everybody. If we stay with storytelling, I'm a dancer originally still. Um, and there's sort of more of a non-linear way of approaching storytelling through dance, right? Through the body. Um, but what can you learn by just exploring? And exploring to me is creativity. Exploring without a set result, right? You're going to explore, or maybe you see something and it has no relation to something else, and maybe you're telling yourself, oh, I can't do that because, that would be weird. But maybe go into the weird a little bit, maybe just dig a little deeper and find something uncomfortable in what is comfortable, or explore new things in your own house, right? See if you know something. Can you do something different with it?
I
Yeah.
love that. I love what you said specifically, Gabri, of exploring without set goals or set expectations. Really, a lot of times I feel that some even now, as I've spent so many hours on creativity, there's sometimes every now and then that you get this block of, oh, that's not good, so it then hinders your creativity and the journey and the process, as you say. So anyone who's like coming up with that expectation, what would you say to them about getting into, as you said, uncomfortable with with something that's weird, or that exploration of creativity?
Well, what are we really talking about, right? We're really talking about judgment and societal pressures to be normal, to fit in. And we internalize that. We internalize the behavior, we internalize labels. Maybe your aunt told you you're not creative. Maybe you've told yourself you're not creative because you work in a bank. But we all have fantasy and creativity. It all has to do with allowing ourselves, for me, to just explore and be creative and not worry about what people will say, right? Not all creativity has to be shared outside, right? So find maybe a safe space to share it, but maybe just share it with yourself. Maybe journal, maybe paint, write stories. And if you have a safe place to share it, then share it if that's meant to be shared. It's also
Mm,
healing, right? It's real healing to explore and just free yourself from the judgment. And then check yourself if the judgment is also towards yourself, if you have internalized it. If you're like, you start something, you're like, oh, I can't do that, right? How many times do we tell ourselves we can't do something? So that's, and then, I teach yoga too. So it's like also come bring it back to your breath and just go with the flow and just see where it leads. And
that's beautiful. Enjoy the process, right?
yeah, totally. Enjoy the process of exploring. It's all about creativity. It's like about exploring and connecting things that maybe normally are not connected. And it's also the process itself about non-judgment and listening
Yeah.
to yourself. Yeah, the non-judgment is really important, I think. Um,
100%. Yeah, the non-judgment, but also one thing that you said was find a safe space. So I encourage anyone who's out there who's wanting to get creative and wanting to express themselves, find those spaces with colleagues that you feel that you trust, that we can all keep a safe space to be creative without that bias, without that judgment. And even with yourself, as Gabri said, you can journal for yourself, with yourself. No one else has to read this book.
there's that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and Martha Graham, one choreographer, said, it's not your job to judge yourself. It's your job to do the work. The job to
Mm,
judge yourself is from other people. And I always like that, right? It's not your job to sit judging, because if you're judging while you're creating, then what's that, right? And so weirdly enough, those identity and creativity for me actually tap into each other, because the judgment part of that, right? So
yeah.
if you are labeling yourself the way a society labels you, how does that stop you? And that's just a question to ponder. Does it stop you? How does it stop you? Is it maybe something that you think you need to behave a certain way because, right? And so that's really important. And comes to kindness to yourself.
Beautiful. Gabri, thank you so much. I know that that what you're saying really, as Martia says, the timing of this gathering is beautiful, and what you're saying is beautiful because it gives us all an opportunity to use creativity to express ourselves right now in this time that we really need to really share the connective tissue that we all are, emotionally, socially. And I feel like you are giving us so many wonderful tools to tap into our own creativity and tap into our process. So thank you, Gabri, for that. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah.
What's our timing like? I think we are
We still have 15 minutes.
great. Excellent.
Yep.
We're gonna tap into another question then, Gabri, I have for you.
Yeah,
In this
I see two things also. I see the chat and I see the Q&A.
yeah.
I'm like, okay.
There's a lot going on. This is the
you
world
tell
of
me.
Zoom that we're in, right?
Yeah, you're in charge. You're in
Yeah,
charge.
for sure. I have a question for you.